Welcome for the first time to our premiere edition of Research Fantasy presents our DFS value bin. Who cares what it's called, honestly? It's a value play podcast where we're looking at guys specifically designed to help you round out your lineups, give you some upside in tournaments, and hopefully bring home the money. Last night in our main podcast, we put out Jeremy Lin, who finished very nicely for his price. Georgie Jeng, who had a good game, but Tom Thibodeau just refuses to play him in faster-paced matchups. I think he should be okay tonight against Milwaukee. And Jeffrey Laverne, who again had a pretty strong first half, 2-9-2 is not a bad outing. Until your team gets blown out and your coach determines that you are not valuable enough to be on the floor with the backups, but you're not valuable enough to be in the starting lineup. So it backfired for me. I didn't have a ton of him, but my thought process genuinely was he's going to see time kind of as the first big off the bench because Fred Hoiberg hates Nikola Mirotic. Bobby Portis hasn't been producing. So, hey, I think the opportunity's there. And I thought, hey, if the game turns into a blowout, because Chicago is awful, make no mistakes about it. This team is not a good basketball team. This has to be one of the most disappointing teams all year. I don't know who laughs last when you get rid of Robin Lopez and Rajon Rondo and you bring in Dwayne Wade and there's no movement in what you've done whatsoever, but I digress. Hopefully tonight will be a better night. Big thing to talk about here is that San Antonio is without Kawhi Leonard. Golden State is without Steph, Clay, Draymond, Durant obviously, and Andre Iguodala, so they're down 4 starters at this point. All of the guys that play for Golden State are basically, I think, like 3K and under. Or, I'm sorry, they're like 4K and under. Obviously, they're not 3K and under, with a lot of them falling right at that minimum price marker. So that's where I think a lot of the value is going to be. Here's the thing. If the game is 66-60, which it very well could, and Golden State sees no offensive production whatsoever, this philosophy of rostering these Golden State guys is going to blow up in your face, even if your stars have huge nights, because that's basically what you're going to use them for. You're going to use them to get in LeBron, maybe Anthony Davis or DeMarcus Cousins, or at the very least put LeBron with Kemba, Kyrie, Damian Lillard, anybody who you think is going to turn out well. If the scrub doesn't make it and those other guys do well, you could probably still do okay, but you're going to miss big money. Whereas if you stay away from those guys that don't do well and you build more of a middle of the road lineup, you could see some more success. So I want to put that out there. We'll know more, but I don't even really care what the starting 5 for Golden State looks like. I think they only have like 8 guys active, which would mean they are all likely to see 25-ish minutes. We'll see what happens. First guy I want to talk about is actually from that game. 6K fantasy draft, 3,500 FanDuel, 3K DraftKings, so we get the trifecta minimum price across the board. He's a power forward, and his name is David West, and he's been horrible, basically in terms of fantasy production, because he just doesn't see more than 15 minutes on the floor. But if you remember from years gone by in DFS, David West is a very, very good basketball player who could end up really paying dividends tonight. I think there's a lot of ways to go with this Golden State game, and I am concerned that he's still the guy that they kind of limit, but he hasn't seen big run all year, so why they would be limiting him, I have no idea. But for a minimum price punt play, he's going to be somebody I absolutely love tonight and will have in a ton of my lineups. Now, if you want to differentiate, which I think could be a good idea, because like I said, I think there's going to be so much focus on that side of the ball specifically. Let me actually pause there. I did this in our other video. I'm going to run it down for you too. Here's some players in like the value tier that our module likes tonight. Jordan Crawford, Jeremy Lamb, Ty Lawson, Patty Mills, Jonas Valanciunas, 2 straight really nice games sitting at a $4,800 price tag against Miami, and Hassan Whiteside hasn't exactly been the toughest defender all year, so I think there's a lot of merit in looking that direction. And that actually you can kind of put Pau Gasol in there. He's priced at $5,100 on DraftKings. That's just insane. I'm sorry. I know that he's not seeing like consistent time on the floor, and who knows what's going to happen, especially if this turns into a blowout. But you're looking at a guy that definitely has like 30, 35 point upside, and he's at $5,100. So those are some guys our modules like. Back to our actual picks. Let's stray away from that San Antonio Golden State game. Let's go over to Washington, who's going to be in a fun game against Portland tonight. Let's roll with Jan Mahinmi, center for the Washington Wizards. $7K on Fantasy Draft, $3,900 FanDuel, $3,500 DraftKings. Yes, he blew up a couple of nights ago and had almost a double-double, but he put up over 40 DraftKings points, which is massive, and he was minimum price that night. It hasn't moved too much. $3,500 on DraftKings, $3,900 on FanDuel. He didn't hit value in any of the last few games, but he's still getting at that like 18 and 19 point mark, which again, for a site like DraftKings works out well because you're still getting almost 6x value at that play. And he's a pivot away from someone like a David West or a Matt Barnes. And if one of those guys happens to not do well and only comes through with 15 fantasy points, and Mahinmi can put up a little bit of a better game and hits 22 or 24, or, we see another massive 5-6 steal game out of him that really pushes his fantasy points up and he's into the 30s, you've really won. So that's just some food for thought there. The last guy I like, and I was 100% on him last night because I was really convinced that was the time to buy in, didn't really work out that way. Could tonight on a second half of a back-to-back. I am deep in on Jamal Murray, point guard from the Denver Nuggets. He's $7,800 on Fantasy Draft, $3,700 on FanDuel, $4,000 on DraftKings. And he came in, I think, somewhere between like 14 and 18 fantasy points on DraftKings last night. So it wasn't an actual killer, but it is. If these value plays don't come through, they are killers, because the idea is you play someone at 4K, he gets you 25, 28. Yay, you've hit that 6 to 7 times mark. When he comes in, if he hits 18 and he's only gotten you 4.5, or if he's hit 16 and he only gets you 4, it is a little bit crippling because the value plays are the ones you're really betting on getting you over that 5x mark. The matchup is a little bit better against Sacramento. This is a team that we have seen. We've seen this matchup. This will be the 3rd time since the All-Star break. And interestingly, Murray has put up single-digit fantasy output in both of those games, reinforcing my belief that I want to have him at 100% tonight, because I'm the Ron Rivera of daily fantasy. A lot of times I think I'm the riverboat gambler. And I would love the upside of Jamal Murray to go out there in a good matchup and knock down 5 or 6 trays, have us sitting with, 26, 27 fantasy points at the end of the night, and have some of these guys from the Golden State game struggle. So I'm going to have a lot of Jamal Murray. Don't know exactly where I want to lock him in. I think I'm going to lock him in. So that's where I'm headed tonight. Thank you for listening. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'll be producing a lot more content focused on other sports other than just basketball in the coming weeks. Head over to Research Fantasy. Sign up for our NBA mailing list. Make sure to like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter @ResearchAndWin, and we'll see you next time.